Hey all, and welcome back to There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani, and it is the top of the month, so we are going to work on another MMIW episode because unfortunately, there is a plethora of women that need to be talked about, and we are still in the A's of the list from CBC Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. So let's get into this, shall we? Angeline Eileen Pete was born to Molly Dixon and Herman Pete in Vancouver, BC on December 5th, 1982. According to the family, the firstborn grandchild belongs to the grandparents. Grandparents Eileen Nelson and Gerald Calder, from the age of 4 in Quetzino First Nation, raised her. She learned the traditional ways from them and was surrounded by family and friends in the community of Quetzino. Angeline had one son, Daryl Stauffer Jr., on April 25th, 2004. In April of 2011, Robert Calden and Angeline got engaged. In May of 2011, Angeline traveled from North Vancouver to Alert Bay in order to plan a birthday party with Daryl Sr. Then, on May 26, 2011, Angeline went missing from North Vancouver. Angeline's family has done extensive searches and made multiple appeals to the public since her disappearance. So far, she's not been located. The North Vancouver RCMP is still investigating her disappearance. According to multiple sources, Angeline's relationship was not a good one. Robert was allegedly an abusive alcoholic. And to add some credence to this, on May 20th, police were called out around 9 p.m. to deal with a domestic abuse situation, breaking up a fight between the couple. Robert was charged, but the charges were stayed when Angeline declined to provide a statement against him. And if you know anything about abusive relationships, sometimes, unfortunately, this is how it goes. Angeline had her own assault charges, but I was unable to find a timeline of those. One source does state that on May 25th, the day before, the RCMP issued a warrant for breaching the conditions of her sentence on 2 assault convictions. Here it sounds like the 2 may have had a no-contact order and Angeline had returned home, but again, I was unable to verify this information. The RCMP put out a statement that on May 25th, an officer went to the couple's apartment to execute the warrant. There, they found Robert, who was supposedly on the phone with Angeline. According to him, she stated she was out of the area, prompting the police to request her to return. Yet, online photos from the night before show multiple injuries on Angeline, suggesting she was in another fight with Robert. On the 26th, she was reportedly seen leaving town on a sea bus. According to North Shore News, quote, after spending 3 months trying to track her down through the traveling carnival company she had worked during the summer months, her family reported her missing to police. Since that time, police have followed up on more than 150 tips and done a lie detector test to rule out false leads, but the file remains a missing persons case. Pete's bank account and social media profiles have remained dormant since she disappeared, police said. End quote. According to the RCMP, Robert was questioned and even submitted and passed a polygraph test, cooperating with the investigation. Yet the family has alternatively put out statements that Robert has never contacted them or assisted in any of the searches for Angeline. And like I said, she's unfortunately still an open case. Ann Peters. Ann Rose Peters was born in October of 1986. On October 11th, 2008, the 22-year-old was reported missing after not being heard from for a month. Ann was known to frequent the downtown area of Mission, British Columbia. Authorities say Ann struggled with chemical dependency and was a quote-unquote street trade worker, though nobody can seem to clarify if she was involved in sex trafficking or other activities. There is little information available in her case, and Ann remains missing. The RCMP are still investigating her case. Ann Pootoogook was born on May 11, 1969, in Kingate, Canada. Her family were all artists, and they worked in the West Baffin Eskimo Cooperative. By 1997, the then 28-year-old also joined the cooperative with her own art. She was known for drawings of contemporary Inuit culture. In Toronto, in 2006, she had her first solo at the Power Plant Contemporary Art Gallery, gaining her international notice. She attended the important Glenfiddich Artists in Residence program in Dufftown, Scotland. After her residency, Annie was named the first Inuk recipient of the prestigious Sobey Art Award. Annie moved to Montreal then, and then back home for a time, eventually settling in Ottawa. She worked with other Inuit artists and exhibited her drawings at the Saw Gallery. She began a relationship with a man named William Watt. Later, he would say there were rumors about him that circulated in the community, but he couldn't do anything about them. Denying any issues in the relationship, they were together for 8 years, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Ottawa, when, on the morning of September 19, 2016, Annie was found in the Rideau River. Ottawa police were investigating it as a suspicious death. They told relatives they were unable to determine if she was drowned by herself or by someone else. Because she was in the river, DNA evidence obviously couldn't be gathered. During the investigation, police seized footage from the area surveillance cameras, but unfortunately, Annie was found by the river bank that was obscured by trees along the far side of the park. Investigators have said that they couldn't find any witnesses to help determine Annie's last movements in the area before her death, and issued a public plea for assistance. During an interview, Williams stated, quote, "You are supposed to go through these 5 stages of grief, and I am stuck. Not knowing what happened to her, I can't seem to move on from the pain. I try to get over it. I can't get over it. I don't know. I don't know what to do." When we were having troubles or getting miserable, we used to tell each other, she used to say to me, I used to say to her, just remember Jesus loves you. And it used to help us a lot, but it's not helping me, end quote. Paulus Jonesies, Annie's brother, stated about finding out, quote, "I was hurt. I started crying. She's my little sister," end quote. He further went on to state, quote, "Her boyfriend keeps coming back for her, looking for her, always takes her to his place, and she even told me he tore up her drawing sometimes. Don't know why," end quote. Nancy Einelick, a friend, also reported that Annie had been at the Shepherds of Good Hope in downtown Ottawa and feared for her life. Quote, "She would always complain about the boyfriend being abused," end quote, said Nancy. Williams stated that he did yell at her over her drinking, and one time in their relationship struck her in the face after learning she had given him an STD. Quote, "She resented me, trying to keep her sober, so she runs off and does her thing, and I try to give her space. That is all rumors. She would go downtown and make rumors. It gives her an excuse to go out and get drunk, to be angry at me. All the Inuit people call me a woman beater, an abusive man. It's just not true. I justified their anger. They always have to be mad at somebody," end quote, reported William. William also reported that Annie didn't like water and she couldn't swim. She wouldn't even go deeper than her knees, believing that she must have been with a group of people and they would have had to be drinking for her to be that close to the water. About the investigation, Inuit community supporter worker Saituki Jomi said he is upset with the way Ottawa police handled Annie's investigation, as investigators initially claimed no foul play was suspected in the death. Quote, "You have to understand that we're the capital of Canada, and at 2016, this nation is dealing with missing and murdered women, and they find an Inuk woman in the river, and they call it not suspicious. That's very odd," end quote, he said. He also continued, quote, "We, the Inuit community, knew it was suspicious right from the beginning. We cannot prove it, but we know what she said that led us to our suspicions," end quote. There has been no closure in her case. Annie Yassie. Annie Yassie was born on July 27, 1960, part of the Saisi-Nessie First Nation. She grew up just outside of Churchill, Manitoba. Annie had a sister Eva and a brother Fred. She was known to be kind and beautiful girl that loved to sew doll clothes and loved the quote-unquote hippie look. In 1973, Annie was sent to McKay Residential School in Dauphin, Manitoba, which was about 925 kilometers away from her home village. In June of 1974, she had returned home to stay with brother Fred. On June 22nd, 1974, Annie was out with an older male for Treaty Day. Sources say he was potentially 10 years Annie's senior. The two were drinking and got into a taxi and headed to the gravel pits that were approximately 3 kilometers outside of Churchill. This area was known to be a party area, and by the time the taxi pulled up to it, Annie was reportedly passed out and the man struggled to get her out of the taxi. When the taxi driver returned later to pick up the pair, he found only the man. Unfortunately, Fred thought that Annie was visiting Sister Eva, as she had mentioned it earlier that day. When Eva showed up on June 26th, that was when the family realized Annie had been gone for 4 days, and she was immediately reported to the Churchill Detachment of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Searches began, and both investigators and volunteers searched the area by foot and air. Police brought in search dogs to assist as well. The man was found and questioned, but he claimed he was blacked out, and unfortunately, the case quickly went cold. In the fall of 2014, the Winnipeg detachment of the RCMP reopened Annie's case, to which Eva reported that this was the first time that she had been contacted since the initial investigation in 1974. 2 years later, the RCMP requested a DNA sample from Eva. Eva still lives in Churchill. Annie's other living relatives have all moved on. And unfortunately, this DNA sample didn't lead to anything. Eva feels strongly that the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls needs to happen. Quote, "There's too many of us going missing," end quote, she said. Quote, "Nobody is doing anything about it," end quote. And the older gentleman in this case has subsequently died, and so no further information is found on that, leaving her case also open. Ashley Machiskinic. Ashley Machiskinic was born on November 7th, 1987, and was a member of the First Nations. There was little to find about her childhood. Friends reported that she had a gorgeous smile. Then, on September 15th, 2010, the 22-year-old died after falling out of a 5th-floor window from the Regent Hotel in Vancouver's downtown east side. She fell across the alley and landed approximately 10 feet in between a telephone pole and a manhole, leading the family to believe she was pushed and killed. Her mother, Brenda Strongarm, and cousin Mona Woodward wanted further investigation into her death. Brenda stated, quote, "I hope they found out who is responsible and that justice can be done for her," end quote. We've experienced a lot of anger, a lot of pain, and a lot of frustration. Former Vancouver police officer Dave Dickerson, who said he had known Ashley for over 7 years, reported that the way that her body landed led him also to believe that she had to have been pushed or thrown out that window. A Vancouver Police Department spokesperson told CBC News, quote, "Ashley's case was examined and thoroughly investigated by the VPD Homicide Unit with our Major Crime Section. The investigation was examined and reviewed at several levels, but there is no evidence to show her death to be suspicious," end quote. Toxicology tests showed that Ashley had consumed large amounts of alcohol and, quote-unquote, a potentially lethal level of cocaine in her blood. The coroner's report also reported, quote, "It is known that she continued to use illicit drugs up until the time of her death," end quote. I think that's pretty obvious considering it was still in her system. Area residents had more to say about the situation, however. They said Ashley was the latest of several women to be killed or punished in a highly public way by drug dealers who want to send a message to women about what will happen to them if they don't pay their drug debts. Quote, women get their heads shaved for $30 drug debt. They're killed for $50, end quote, said Carol Martin of the downtown East Side Women's Center. Martin also reported that drug dealers are doing a booming business on the East Side and that women, predominantly those of the First Nation, are still the primary victims of violence. Quote, our women are the mules. They are sex trade workers. They're drug addicted. They're holding or selling drugs for dealers, and they're paying with their lives. Now more than ever, end quote, she said. Vancouver police continue to label this as a suicide. Audrey Desjarlais was a mother. She was a residential school survivor and a member of the Saddle Lake Cree Nation in Alberta. She raised her children, and then in the early 2000s, Audrey left her family in Regina, Saskatchewan, and relocated to Steinbach, Manitoba. Her daughter Barb says Audrey always called to check in, but those calls stopped in 2011. Barb stated, quote, she just stopped calling. We never heard from her again, end quote. Her body was found on June 15th, 2012. She was considered decomposed, and her body was in a garbage bag found on the east side of the Red River, south of the North Perimeter Bridge in Manitoba. Based on her clothing, she was assumed that she was either homeless or a transient. And at this time, she was labeled as a Jane Doe. A police sketch was produced in 2012. Upon seeing it, Barb brought her information to police, believing that it was her mother. However, police purportedly dismissed it as there was a potential sighting of Audrey around the same time frame in Steinbach and Gunthrow. Which, I mean, come on, how often are potential sightings incorrect? The fact that they didn't at least look into it speaks to how they felt about the case. More than I ever could. Then, on April 19th, 2015, Audrey's daughter again shared her picture and the story with CBC. Barb had suspicions that the unidentified remains, pulled from the Red River in June of 2012, again were those of her mother. The Jane Doe was described wearing dentures, long hair, had a thin build, and was about 5'5", and included something very particular, a dolphin necklace, one that her mother had always worn. At the time, Barb wanted a DNA test done, but the Winnipeg Police Services Missing Persons Unit said not all the details about the two women matched, even though they did. She even offered to pay for the DNA test to be completed, and police declined. It wasn't until April 29th, 2015, 10 days after the CBC started probing into Audrey's story, did her daughter be informed that, of course, the Regina police collected her DNA and were going to do a DNA confirmation. And in June, DNA tests surely did confirm the remains of Audrey, 3 years after she was found in the Red River. The Winnipeg Police Service say there is now an quote-unquote open investigation into the death of Audrey. But up until this time, all they've done is waste time. So obviously, it is open. And unfortunately, that is the end of the cases for today. I know that they're always tough, but I feel like this is one of the ways that we can keep their memories alive and keep this information going. So to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.